Welcome to the Albany Film Festival of the New York State Writers Institute here at the University at Albany. I am Amberly Carter, Assistant Director of the Office of Intercultural Student Engagement and also the program coordinator for the Multicultural Resource Center and the Interfaith Center. With us today is someone we hope to have had visit with us pre-pandemic, but that we are super excited is joining us today. Couldn't stand to wait any longer. Director and screenwriter, Casey Lemmons.
I'm so glad to be here.
Welcome, Casey. Casey is one of the New York State Writers Institute's Ironweed Award recipient for achievement in film. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We are so excited and happy to have you. I'm so deeply honored to be able to host this interview with you today. You've acted in, written, and directed so many poignant films, from Spike Lee's School Days to Silence of the Lambs to CANDYMAN, EVE'S BAYOU to Talk to Me to Harriet. And I'm really looking forward to learning more about you and how your work came about from a cultural and intersectional lens.
Great, Amberly.
So let's dive in. So tell us, who is Casey Lemmons?
Well, I'm a writer, I'm an artist. That's one of the first things that really, I feel like identifies me. I'm a Black woman, artist, mother, wife, and writer, director, filmmaker.
Yes.
Professor.
Professor. Exactly. So tell us more about you as a professor. Where are you a professor?
I'm a professor at NYU Grad Film, and I've taught at many different places, but I'm at NYU, and I've been at NYU for 7 years.
Awesome. So what life experiences have shown up in your work as a writer, and how has it influenced you as a director?
What life experience? It's interesting because in some ways, acting was my first love. So as you know, you listed some movies I've acted in. That was my first love. I started acting when I was a kid, but I also started writing when I was a kid. And I think just being an introverted child and always kind of daydreaming, looking inward and telling myself stories. And I started writing stories when I was little. I'm at the house that was my mother's house, and I was looking through things, and I found a book that I wrote when I was 12, and I put a copyright on it.
Copyright on it. That's awesome.
I was always playing around with it. And I think that at a certain point in my expression as an actress, I was very fortunate. I've been very blessed in my career, but at that point I was playing a lot of like Black girl best friend parts. And I really felt a deeper need to express. And so I dove deeper into my writing and really kind of made that the primary focus of my career. And then that became kind of filmmaking,
Yeah.
The marriage. I think of filmmaking as like a natural marriage of acting and writing.
Oh, wonderful. And you talked about writing at, you said 12, right?
Yeah.
So you already had some influences and some folks that maybe you looked up to. Can you tell us more about who they were?
Yeah, Toni Morrison was super important in my art. I mean, she's a guardian angel, even when she was living, she felt like a guardian angel to me. She really expanded my my mind and made me look at the world, or it was more than her causing me to look at the world. She caused me to look at Blackness and realize that we could speak about ourselves, in a very as complex as we are. And one of the things that I loved is that she would create whole Black worlds where it wasn't really about, racism. Our lives are in many ways a product of everything that we've been through, but also just very rich and complex people, good guys and bad guys and everything in between. And that's really influenced my writing, or I realized she was speaking a language that I understood. And also magic realism is very important to me. It's the way that I think, and so Toni Morrison and Gabriel Garcia Marquez, really like
Yes.
very, very influential on that part of my writing. And, honestly, all the Southern playwrights and novelists, you know, from Tennessee Williams to, like it's kind of a big wealth. I read everything, but the things that I related to in terms of a certain way of looking at language had to do with Southern writers. A lot of it. I come from a very, very deeply Southern family. And I enjoy that, and
Yes. But you didn't grow up in the South. So
I
that's
grew up
really
In
interesting.
St. Louis, the near South,
Right.
but
The near South. That's so funny because I'm in Chicago right now. I grew up in Chicago, and St. Louis and Missouri does not seem very South to me because it's
yeah,
just right around the corner, right?
yeah,
But
yeah,
those
yeah.
influences, they say everybody from Chicago is from the South. So I can totally understand where you're coming from when you say there's so much influence
Yep.
in your
My
life.
mother's from Americus, Georgia. My father's from Birmingham, Alabama. They met at Tuskegee. And so I spent a lot of time when I was a kid with my grandmother in Tuskegee, and that really became a lot of the extrapolated background for Eve's Bayou, actually, which
I
of
can
course
see
was
that.
set in Louisiana, but it was a lot of my memories of being a child in Alabama, in
Wonderful.
Tuskegee.
So how did you move from being an actress to a screenplay writer and directing? And when did you know you were good at it?
It's interesting. I wrote in my 20s, I was writing scenes for friends of mine to do in acting class. We were all in acting class, and everybody was always doing the same stuff, and the famous playwrights of the time, and of course the classic playwrights. And I started writing scenes for friends of mine to do in acting class. And, they would tell me, like, the acting teacher was always like, who wrote that? And I started thinking, I'm pretty good at this writing scenes thing. you know I'm pretty good at that. I have an ear for dialogue. um and then uh you know that developed, and I started writing longer pieces, and started kind of playing with the challenge of a 3-act structure, you
Mm.
know and taking that kind of gift for hearing dialogue and extrapolating on it. And so I'm still, I look at myself as still on the journey. I
Mhm.
think I'm a pretty good writer. I'd like to be a better writer. Everything is challenging, but I have a trunk of screenplays that I've written. I've probably written, I don't know, maybe between 40 and 50.
Wow.
So many, many, many unproduced screenplays. But
So
I
we're gonna
think
see some of those.
yeah, I might be pulling some of those out and dusting them off. And
Okay.
yeah, it's a big love of mine, writing. I really do love to write.
Yes. So thinking of young people who may be watching this at home or in their classrooms, what do you wish you knew early on in your career? And how does that impact now the projects that you choose to work on?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I've been asked this question before. I have a difficult time answering it in some ways because I'm happy that I in some ways didn't know how hard it was. But that was one thing. I think that I knew it was going to be hard, but I didn't think it through. And I don't know that I would have changed anything uh, if I had known how hard it was. But I kept thinking we were on the brink of what we're on the brink of now. You know what I mean?
Mm,
I kept thinking,
mhm.
oh, the floodgates are going to break open, and we're going to have all this opportunity. And we have been pushing at that door for a long time, and now finally we feel okay. We've proved ourselves. Our work is viable. Our work
Mhm.
makes money. We have a variety of different voices, and now you're beginning to see. Um, beginning to see, you
Right.
know, that type of representation, where we cross every genre. We can write anything, we can direct anything, we can make very, 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 very marketable and profitable movies. We have superheroes,
Yes.
but I kept waiting for that. And in some ways, if I had known how hard it was going to be, um, I don't know what I would have done. So It has, however, definitely influenced how I think about things now, and what I say to students. So what I say to students is enjoy the journey. I mean it, of being an artist. You have to wake up and enjoy being an artist every day. You got to enjoy the journey because the destination is unsure,
Mm,
right? You
yes.
know, people want to make it. I say, I don't know where it is located. I don't know. And I can't draw you a map. I can't draw you a map, but what I can tell you is that if you enjoy the process of being an artist, if you enjoy making art and the process and that level of attempting communication, right? Because that's what it is, it's
Mm.
communicating, then you will have a happy life. You'll have a happy journey because every step of the way you're enjoying just waking up and creating and being an artist.
So waking up and creating and being an artist, is there a daily routine? How do you become successful? And how do you know that you are successful?
Well, like I said, I think you're successful if you're doing what you love to do. And I know it sounds cliche, but I mean, I really believe that. Um, for me, success is that right now, at this point in my life, I do, and I've been this way for a while, I do what I want to do. I work on what I want to work on. If a story speaks to me, I'll go after it. Or if someone offers it to me and it speaks to me, I'll accept that job. That's the way I choose work. I choose work for love and passion because I got to tell you, it's incredibly hard. And I, to me, it's too hard to do for money.
Mm.
It's just too hard. It's hard and it's painful, and you have to love it. If you don't love it, it's not worth it. It's not worth going through that kind of that level of pain because it's painful. The
Mm.
process involves pain also, but it's freeing. I find it freeing. So I feel pain when I write. I feel pain for my characters. I dive deep into history, and history can be painful, but I find the process, you know, very freeing. But show business is painful.
Mm.
Show business is hard. It's hard, and it's hard on a lot of different levels. And
Mhm.
so I work on what I love to work on and what I think I'll be able to sustain an enjoyment, you know, because sometimes it takes years to get a movie made. And so I have to be able to love it and be able to sustain that relationship, right?
Yeah.
With material.
I watched an interview with you where you were talking about how the character Harriet had to speak to you.
Mhm.
And that really just resonated with me around how you do your work and what it takes to do the work that you're doing. So when you talk about feeling a character deeply, I feel like that's what you were saying. You
Mhm.
are listening for what needs to happen from the character, from our ancestors, really,
Mhm.
because that's who the film was about, an ancestor who's telling you in a spiritual kind of way how to move forward. That's so important.
I mean, I write from character anyway, so I've got to say I can have a very, very deep relationship with a fictional character.
Mm.
A very deep, like I could touch them, right?
Mhm.
But Harriet, because she's so beloved, and so we have such deep feelings about Harriet, and yet I felt that we didn't know her we didn't know her. I wanted to bring her to you like you had lunch with her, like like just
Mhm.
be able to access her. And that took a lot of deep meditation on my part, and really trying to channel her and trying to bring her and um, invoke her. And I made a practice of that. I would say her name before I went to bed and say her name first thing in the morning and try and bring her to me. And I'm not I've talked to many writers that work this way, where you really try and bring the character, especially if it was somebody who lived and breathed, and was so admired, to bring this character to us. And during that time, during, I would say, a period of 2 years, I was doing the heavy research and then making the movie, editing the movie. I could touch her hands. I
So
could.
what goes into doing the research for a character like that?
Mhm. So there were, I read everything on Harriet and everything on the Underground Railroad and writings of that period and slave narratives. That was really important because I was trying to I was trying to get a language, and I really didn't want to oversimplify that or take the word of one or a handful or even a school of writers that do a certain type of Black dialect, right? So I didn't want to trust that. I wanted to really read narratives and try and get a language. I read every major biography on Harriet Tubman and other books in which she appeared, like books about the Underground Railroad, in which she appeared, and letters between people in the Underground Railroad that referred to her, and really tried to get a sense of who she was or how she's materialized for different biographers. There's some very, very good biographies on Harriet.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, because I'm sure there's some folks out there who want to know how they can be better writers, right?
Mhm.
And how they can do better research so that they can develop their characters. So let's talk about identity development and character development in film. I get the sense that you have some spiritual background because I see it as a common thread or a theme in some of your films, like Eve's Bayou, when we saw some voodoo. Harriet had some spells where she actually heard the voice of God speaking to her. And even in Talk to Me, had some spiritual undertones and some things said about God. I know Black people are spiritual beings, but how much of your own spiritual identity has shown up or influenced your work?
Well, I mean, it definitely influences my work. And it's like who I am, and not in the way that people think. Often, I'm not I wouldn't call myself particularly religious, but very deeply spiritual, and feel a close personal relationship with the higher power and the ancestors.
Yeah.
So, so though this is very familiar to me and it's something that speaks to me and it definitely gets into my work, with Harriet, it was really, I was doing the research before I realized this about her. And then I said, okay, we don't know. We don't really know that, even though it's a very simple Google, right? And if you read any biography on Harriet, it shows up. I didn't feel that commonly people knew that about Harriet. If you ask somebody about Harriet, they're going to tell you about the enslaved people she rescued, right?
Hmm.
But they don't really talk about this woman who was a prophet and who had a personal connection with God that was vivid enough that she felt that God was talking to her all the time, and that she had these spells, and she was mystical. So when I talk about not only reading biographies but reading how other writers spoke about her contemporaneously, especially writers of the time, people that knew her, and the historians. She was a mystic, and she was described as a mystic. And her friends of the time said, "Well, I'm not sure I believe it, but I'm 100% certain that she believes it."
Awesome.
And so then I realized, okay, we're speaking a language that this aspect of her is really speaking to me, but there are so many things about her that were speaking to me. It wasn't just that, but it was something that I wasn't afraid of leaning into, because I realized that if that was not part of the story, it would be because you had failed the story, because the Harriet Tubman story is a spiritual story, and part of the Harriet Tubman story is about her relationship with God, and the fact that she felt she had that calling, and she was, I can't say she was fearless, because people have fear and fear is necessary, but she said, when God is done with me, he'll let them take me. And that's really what she believed. And so she was like, I'm going to keep fighting until God is done with me.
Absolutely. And if you don't pay close enough attention to the film, you won't catch that. You'll
Mhm.
just assume that, uh, or her personal story, I should say, you won't catch that it's spiritual. You will just assume that it is an ailment or something that happened to her, and now she has a handicap because of it. And so it stood out to me when I watched the film as something that we should all be thinking about, right? We should be thinking about how spirituality shows up in people's lives and intersects with who they are, the hero, right? How does spirituality show up for the hero?
Mhm.
and what we recognize to be the heroic characteristics of someone, right? So
Right.
thank you for that. That really opened up some doors and some understanding about things for me personally.
Great.
So some of your films tell us stories about challenges faced by Black families, in
Mhm.
particular, mass incarceration of Black men, emotional and physical abuse, community violence, and fractures in Black love, like heartbreak after someone cheats.
Mhm.
So, do you think film is a platform for the jaded and the brokenhearted to discover realistic ways to heal their personal traumas?
Well, sure. I mean, I think that art can be healing, of course, it's a reflection of just us as human beings, right? One of the things that I love about filmmaking is that it allows you to travel in space and time, right? And what you realize is that the world is small and that human beings have very similar journeys and pains, and we all have heartbreak. We love our families. We have hopes for our children, you know, and so the things that make us human, we're investigating. So it's like, yeah, heartbreak happens. You know, heartbreak happens. So the artists, yeah, let's dive into that. You know, we have specific issues as African Americans, but what I was really exploring, especially with Eve's Bayou, was the things that you know, the things that could be anybody's family, right? It was a
Absolutely.
very specific place, but it could be anybody's family. Cheating and broken boundaries, you know, those are things that can happen in anybody's family, and so you know, that was very important to me to speak on that. I do like African American history. I'm very, very passionate about it. And that the challenges and strengths that are specific to African American people, that is magic to me, you know. So like the resilience, you know,
Mhm.
that's I get shivers thinking about it. Like you know, the resilience of Black people is something that I'm very, you know, which came out in Harriet, of course, you know,
Mhm.
that's extremely powerful for me. You know, so both our heartbreak and our struggles and our resilience and strength and magic, you know, and soulfulness, that's all very important to me.
It's very important to us as a Black community too, to be able to look to these stories and use them and teach our children, you know, that we are a people of resilience. So
Hmm.
unless the work is created, we can't do that. So thank you. So Talk to Me shatters stereotypes about Black men and sparks dialogue on the Black male identity not being a monolith. After state sanctioned violence occurs in our Black community and there is a release of a new identity centered film, how do we elongate or extend that dialogue long after the hype of the film has died down?
Um, what film are you speaking of? You
Just
mean?
filming and film in general, there's so
Mhm,
many that come out that center identities, and it can be Black identity, it can be the
mhm,
LGBT community, it can be the intersectional lens, right? Uh,
mhm,
and when these things happen in our community to marginalized folks, how do we continue to have the dialogue? How do we keep the conversation that is depicted in your films, like specifically Talk to Me,
mhm,
really kind of sparked a lot of conversation and
mhm,
question around police violence
mhm.
and also mass incarceration.
Yeah, it was really interesting because I started teaching my semester, you know, in September um, of 20, and everyone was raw. You know, everyone was raw. Everyone was hurting. Um, and the first class I just showed an hour of Talk to Me, and I said, you know, this is it. This film takes place in you know 1967 to 72, and deals with events in 1968. Um, but this is very relevant right now, and I want to talk about this, and I want to talk about the power of film. So it's interesting. It's like the power of film to make you feel something that happened many decades before, to make you feel it in a visceral way. Um, and that's what is important, because we're in danger of forgetting history all the time.
Mhm.
It's almost like part of our nature is to kind of forget what we've been through and keep repeating our mistakes, you know. And so it's a very important to make people feel what the past, that the past is present, you know, so that the past is present. So I think like, you know, on certainly as a professor, like watching films and just you know, really talking about them and talking about how things stay relevant and or relevant become relevant again, that's extremely important. And I think that that's a wonderful thing about art, right? Is that it stays. If you make a film, Talk to Me, I made that quite a while ago, 2007, you know, but that film has stayed with people, and many people called me and spoke about specifically the riot scene in and the events around Martin Luther King's assassination, uh, depicted in the film, and how relevant that felt to the events of this past summer, you know. And I mean, I think that's amazing, you know, and film can be very healing. It allows you to experience many things and release emotion, you know, and hopefully come to understanding and clarity and um, inspiration and maybe even enlightenment, you know. But I think the thing to do in general is not to run away from pain and conflict. You know, we have to be willing to explore how we got here. You know, I think that as Black people, as African Americans, sometimes you just want to be like, okay, you know, let's just, do I have to, you know,
Right.
do I have to experience this all the time? And so, you know, I don't have to think about being a Black woman, right? I've been a Black woman every day of my life, except when there are times when I do have to think about it. And when I do, I don't run away from that. You know, I don't run away from that. I lean towards it, as a matter of fact. I mean, you know, I want to understand it. I want to understand it on a lot of different levels. I want to understand how the hell we got here, how this particular climate there, and how did we get here? Well, you know, I know some things about history. I know some things about American history and African American history, and I know exactly how we got here. You know, and that is not that's painful, but it's also freeing, right? The truth will set you free.
And that's so that's so poignant, because I think about the fact that, you know, we'll leave a movie theater or finish watching a film and we're left with this really strange feeling. And I never really knew how to pinpoint what that was, but you just called it enlightenment. And so I think that's what that feeling is. It's a feeling of enlightenment where you caught something that you never felt before, or maybe you're feeling it again for the first time, again and again and again, because it's awakening something in you.
Yeah,
It's enlightening.
humanity. I think it's humanity, just like, and you go on a journey, you know, when you see a movie, you go on a journey. And so it's like, okay, well, that was an interesting journey. That was a good journey. Or that was a hard journey, but I'm glad I went there, you know.
Yeah, and then you'll feel like this heaviness afterwards, or like, okay, the journey's over. Like, what's next? Is there another
Right.
journey
Right.
coming up?
Right.
Absolutely. So, a lot of your work depicts Black women as strong and independent.
Mhm.
What was going on in your life when you began filming Harriet? How did this influence your decisions about her character? And is there anything you would have done differently with any of the characters?
I really made the movie that I wanted to make. I loved Harriet's character. You know, it's a different. The challenge for me with Harriet is because she was close to perfect. You know, tend to like flawed characters because they remind me of me and they remind me of people that I know. Um, Harriet, the trick with Harriet is that she didn't have flaws that you can pinpoint, you know. Um, she loved very deeply, you know, and she could get very angry, you know, but she didn't, she was so forgiving and so willing to, she was very, very militant and full of fire, and so empowered by this idea of freedom, incredibly courageous. Um, but she also was filled with love, and everybody says it, you know, all of her friends, and she had many, 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 many white friends that were abolitionists and people that she met, and she could relate to. Everybody spoke of her, just her warmth and generosity, and you know, you start to wonder, like, I don't know, like, you know, how somebody could be so awesome, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, she was a really interesting character for me, and somebody um, very different. In terms of independent women, you know, that's all my mother. You know, I had a very
I
independent
was
mother,
just gonna ask you about your mother.
a very, very independent mother. She was awesome. She passed away in 2016, but my mother was awesome. She was a clinical psychologist, but she, you know, she could have been a very traditional woman, and she just wasn't. I mean, she was raised by an awesome mother. I got to say, her mother was also very forward thinking and had graduated from Tuskegee, and then my mother went to Tuskegee and then got her master's at Washington U, and then got her doctorate at Harvard. Very, very, very smart lady, and
And determined.
very determined. And her motto always was like, keep going, don't let anything stop you. If you see a barrier, go through it or go over it, don't let anything stop you. And I realized later that she must have been influenced by Harriet, because, you know, of course, that's one of Harriet's mottos, you know. And she always said, you know, she loved that poem, Look to This Day. You know, she really tried to live in the moment, and she was completely amazing. And so when I think of an independent woman, or a woman who won't let anything stop her, you know, I think of my mother. And so it's very easy for me to access independent women. I'm surrounded by them. In fact, you know, my friends are all independent women, and my students are independent women. My children, I have independent women children, you know. So it's I don't know. I think that it's inspiring, ever inspiring, uh, to be and to know Black women.
Yes, I'm loving that we're seeing more films about independent Black women and in a positive light. Like the representation is starting to look so good,
Mhm.
and it does help us to grow as a woman. You know, to understand our strength, our own strength when we see it represented on the screen. So, you know, do you think that love is something that people can experience that's positive on screen, as
Oh,
well as being an independent woman? Because a lot of times when they show the independent woman, there's the conflict that they choose is for that person to have issues in their love life.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, I do. I mean, and I love a good love story. Um, I do. What comes to mind is my dear friend Gina Prince Bythewood, who's made some great love stories, you know. Um, and I do. I mean, I think that um, that love takes courage and patience, you know, and there is conflict. There just always is, you know. So romantic love is not all to be said about love,
Yeah.
and the love between the romantic love and sexual love is not all that's to be said about love, right? So Talk to Me is a love story, right, between two friends. It's a
Yes.
platonic love story between two guys, right?
Mhm.
But there are many different types of love. The love between girlfriends, the love between you know, sister friends, and the love between sisters, and the love between husband and wife, of course, and man and woman, and or whoever your partner is. Um, you know, those are very important. And so I think that one of the things that's super encouraging to me is seeing all kinds of love stories, you know, now, not just traditional heterosexual love stories, but all kinds of love stories represented, and talking about not just romantic love, but every kind of love, you know. So I think that it's super important. You know, some of the most important movies for me, as a woman, as a Black woman, have to do with the love between women, between that is not necessarily sexual, right? But it has to do with sisterhood. You know, so yeah, I love love. I love love, but it's complicated.
Yes. Thank you for that. So what kind of impact have you seen films have on societal change?
Well, that's interesting, because it's hard to imagine a world without them. And yet, how do we know that a film has really changed minds? Um, but the first thing that comes to my mind is there is a film I'm very fond of called A Fantastic Woman. And this is about a trans woman in Chile, in Santiago, Chile. And and I know that it changed opinions in Chile, when it came out. And so I look to films like that as the ability to really portray you know, a character that you might not see all the time, you know, um, and really put you right next to what they're feeling. I think that that's just healthy. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's healthy. So that's the one that comes to mind because I had heard that a lot of things changed in Chile because of this representation of this very, very dimensional and deep and incredibly strong and a graceful, trans woman in this movie. And so I think that, I don't know, I mean, I think I'm hopeful that it happens all the time. I'm hopeful that it happens all the time. I think that in little ways, when you see a film like Black Panther and kids can look to a Black superhero, I think that that's amazing. I think, Harriet, that having kids look to a character like Harriet as a superhero, that's amazing. It's amazing for us to be able to see heroes that we can relate to or that look like us. And so I think it's empowering, certainly for our community. But it also helps us to understand the world. That's why I like all kinds of movies, because it helps you to understand the world and to realize that we're so similar. I mean, humans are very similar, right? Across many different cultures and thousands of miles.
Absolutely. So you mentioned that a lot of people reached out to you about Talk to Me
Mhm,
after the murder of George Floyd. And so
absolutely.
Talk to Me takes on police violence.
Mhm.
And given the Derek Chauvin verdict, do you see more films adding outcomes that depict the power of the people?
Well, I certainly hope so. Um, it's just happening now, though, which is crazy, right? I mean, it's just happening now that I mean, really, like we're delighted and relieved, right? And surprised, and we were hopeful, but still it could have gone the other way. So we're just now seeing this. It's important to look at history and to look at those verdicts that have not gone the way, that they clearly should have, and just to say, okay, this is why we're mad. You know what I mean? This is what we've gone through, is verdict after verdict after verdict after verdict after verdict, going back to Emmett Till, right? Verdict after verdict, where, in a very short span of time, 69 minutes, a jury can go, oh yeah, well, no, we think this murder was fine, right? And, you know, either, oh, well, they didn't do it or they didn't mean it. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, hopefully now we can begin to talk about uh, the empowerment that comes from justice. But of course, what we've seen is a lack of justice, and it's also important to look at films about that.
What I love about Talk to Me is that it was such an inspiring film about taking ownership of your voice,
Mhm.
right? So, do you think that the media can ever truly be for the people, or will capitalism be too powerful? How does capitalism influence or even dilute the film industry to be able to tell these stories? And is there anything that can be done about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's really interesting. Everybody with an individual voice, which we all have them, right? Um, as soon as you start talking to a tremendous number of people, weird stuff happens, right? So it's like, how do we keep our own center in the face of anything? How do we keep our own integrity in the face of the internet? How do we navigate our own voice and um, tune out some of the noise. And, you really have to be able to say, which Petey was, could do. I'm going to speak truth to power. I'm going to say what I want to say. And some of it you're going to like, he says, some of it you ain't. Some of it you're going to like, some of it you ain't. And I think that is how we have to proceed. We don't have to approve of everything everybody says. We can take what we like, but in order to have the courage to speak truth to power, you have to be willing to, you have to be willing to stay focused on what is your truth. And, just know that some of it you're going to like and some of it you ain't. I think that capitalism, it's a rough one, in the movie industry. I mean, that's a rough one. It is, ultimately, when you're making movies, you're trying to speak your truth. You're trying to make a connection with the audience, but you're also trying to satisfy the needs of the distributor of the film, which is marketability, and ultimately you want people to see your movie. You don't, you want to reach the people that you want to reach, but it's like, I feel like it's like Petey. It's like some of it you're gonna like, some of it you ain't. Some of you are gonna love this, and this movie is for you. That this movie is for. Not everybody's gonna like everything that I do, and I think as artists we have to realize that and be empowered by that. You know what I mean? And just be like, Petey, some of you gonna like, some of you ain't. But this is me. This is me. I'm Petey Green. I'm gonna keep talking shit. Right? That's what he said.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep saying it. And so first of all, I love this movie. This movie is very, very important to me. I really loved making it. And I love the movie. I love the movie, and I love the character of Petey Green. I love both those two men, those characters, Dewey Hughes and Petey Green. And I'm very, very inspired by Petey.
I love the
God.
movie, and I love how you wrote the characters, and the relationship between the two men is one that I think shows progress, right? Progress, and that we're not monolith as a people. And there's so many different things I learned, lessons that I took from that film that I share with my students. Like, it's just really important. So thank you so much for making that film.
Thank you for enjoying it.
Let's switch it up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So what are your thoughts on Black horror movies like Get Out and Us?
Yeah, loved them. First of all, I like a certain kind of horror films. I don't usually like slasher kind of films, but I definitely love genre films, and those films are speaking my language, especially Get Out, because um, it's speaking about race in an interesting way, right? And dealing with questions of racism, but in a very interesting way, and incredibly entertaining, and to me quite profound. And I really, really, really love both those films, and I love Black genre.
I love the films, but they traumatize me. I have to keep it real and keep it honest, right? So there are a lot of people who talk about that, right? Like when they say Black horror genre, like what we're seeing in the series, Them and Lovecraft Country, which I love, 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 that people are profiting off of Black pain.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe that's happening? And what are they really talking about when they say that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, are we supposed to be ashamed of it? And yet there is, I felt I would get slightly queasy when talking about slavery and slavery movies, and just, I don't know, I felt that I became suspicious that there was an appetite for seeing Black broken bodies that I didn't want to give into. Not in Harriet's story, because Harriet's a freedom story. It's like, okay, we've seen people whipped and over again. And yes, that was something that happened far too often, and was absolutely commonplace. But I don't know, I was hesitant to make that entertaining, we've seen it and it's awful. And after a while, it is traumatizing. It is traumatizing. And I do think that there's part of the Black audience is traumatized by it. And so it's like, okay, well, let's look at it from a little bit of a different angle, which was easy in the Harriet story because it was the exhilaration of freedom was what I was trying to make it about. And really, I found that very empowering, and just her courage, so I am not afraid of Black pain. On the other hand, I am suspicious of the exploitation of it.
Mhm.
And not in terms of us,
Got
maybe
it.
in terms of white people, like, are you entertained by this? Why do you need to see that? Why do you need to see that to think that something's authentic? Because there are many different ways of looking at a story. Love is very important. So when I was making Harriet, I felt profoundly um, that I was standing on hallowed ground sometimes when I was at a plantation. And even though that's a weird thing to say, I felt that I was on the ground where people had, yes, suffered, but where they had loved and raised children, you know, and I felt some places just felt evil. You know what I mean? I'm very sensitive, and some places just felt evil, but some of it you could feel. They lived lives. Enslaved people lived lives and married and had children and suffered terribly. But love is really important. So I hope that in films that deal with Black pain, there's also a deep exploration of love, because that how our families have stayed together, how we've managed, to survive has a lot to do with, yes, our, incredible resilience and spirituality, but also our love and our capacity to love and our capacity to forgive and to, to continue moving forward. And so, yeah, it's a long answer. I'm not, I have mixed feelings, I explore Black pain quite a bit, but I wouldn't want it exploited um, for the enjoyment of the wrong people.
That's so pivotal. Thank you for saying that. I am a cousin of Emmett Till, and watching films like Harriet and Talk to Me give me hope that a film about my family's story can be done right and feel good and with care, like you're speaking about it. So that's pivotal. It's poignant. It makes me proud. Thank you. Yet I still cringed when I heard Jay-Z and Taraji announce that they were going to be doing a project on Emmett Till.
Mhm.
And I have some very real fears about how those projects will turn out. I'll just say that. So,
What are your fears? I'm just curious.
my fear when they first started made the announcement, I don't know that members of my family were aware that the announcement was going to be made.
Mhm.
And so the fear is that they'll do this film without really knowing who Emmett was,
Mhm.
right? He was a little boy who liked to play baseball.
Mhm.
He was a little boy who did practical jokes, told a lot of stories and jokes to his friends and was extremely close to his mother. Well, they
Mhm.
shared that his stepfather, Gene, who I was very close to, um, that he told him he couldn't marry his mother and that
Mhm.
they held off the wedding. Like, will they tell those types of stories that really speak to the family and the love that we had for this little boy? And although I never got to meet Emmett, I was very close to his mother, right? And she told me the story of Emmett Till sitting on her couch. So I wonder if that story is going to be told, or if it's going to be the same old, like, let's get this film done and let's shoot it out to everybody, or are you really going to tell the story that needs to be told, the story that I want to watch, you know?
Well, I think that, yeah, I think I know some people telling the story that you'll want to watch. I do. Um, yes, I just finished shooting the finale of Women of the Movement, and I think that you will be very happy with it. I mean, certainly it's exhaustively researched and with beautifully fleshed out characters, and it's full of Black love and resilience. And yes, there's suffering, but it's full of life. And I don't know. I think it's great. I think it's great that movies are getting made about Emmett Till. I got to tell you, I mean, this is a very difficult story, but it's extremely important that we know this. And when we were talking about exploiting Black pain and Black, you know, and our history, there are some things that are extremely important for the white audience to understand, for us to understand about our own history, but also for those that say, what are you so mad about? You know,
Right.
to understand about our history. It's like, no, this happened, okay? This child was lynched. This happened. And they got away with murder. And you know, and yes, it's a mother and son story, and it's a beautiful story of their relationship and a mother's love, but a mother's resilience and pain also, you know. I think it's a very good thing that stories about Emmett Till are getting made. It was extremely important story in our history. And I think it's amazing that you knew Mamie. She's kind of a hero of mine, and I think it's amazing. And Jean, and you know,
Mhm.
these characters I've come to feel close to
So I know
in
this is your
Mother.
interview, but I do want to share one story about
Yeah,
Mamie
please.
and Jean. When I was little, my mom used to take me over to Mamie's house, and I'll be honest, I was a little kid and I didn't understand the magnitude of who she was or her life story or Emmett or anything like that. And so she would always tell me to wash her dishes when I came to the house. I'm like, cousin Mamie, I don't want to wash dishes. My mom said I'm too little. My brothers and sisters do it. Why do I have to wash your dishes? And she said, you're not too little. And I'm going to teach you exactly what you need to do. Right. And so she put this step stool right by the kitchen sink and have me stand on a step stool and teach me how to wash dishes and teach me how to do housework and things
Wow.
like that. And I learned a lot from her just by sitting around her kitchen table. But Jean was my favorite person. He's the first death that I ever experienced as a child that I truly understood what was happening. First funeral my mother brought me to, and it was crushing. It was so hurtful because he was such a sweetheart. And I would come visit him at the barbershop, and he'd sit me in his chair, and he'd act like he was cutting my hair as a little girl. And then he'd try to give me like $2 and say, put this away for college. No, first he said, put this away for some milk, buy a glass of milk at school. And I'd say, I'm lactose intolerant. He's like, what do you know about being lactose intolerant? Right. The first understanding of college came from Mamie and Jean because they wanted me to start this college fund. And so they just played a very pivotal role in my life. And, I'm grateful to have known them and to have, known Emmett through them. So,
That's fantastic. It's wonderful to have that connection. I mean, you know, it is. It's like part of history, and such beautiful people.
thank you for that. So, as we bring this interview to a close, I would like to ask you about your dreams. Are you currently living your dream?
I think so. I mean, I do. I think I'm excited and hopeful, and I get to work on stuff that I love. I get to work out things that I'm perplexed about or angry about in my work. I get to explore different characters and go to different places in my work. Um, I meet so many and have met so many incredible people through my work. I get to work with young people that are just emerging, just beginning their careers. You know, so it's living the dream, and I got to have and I get to have my family. You know, so I get to have my career and a family. So yeah, I think this is good for me.
Good. So, what advice do you have for the scholars who are dreaming of being as successful as you in the film industry one day? What advice do you have for them? Are there any books that they definitely need to read? I know you're a professor. Maybe you can share some of the ones that you have your students read, or techniques that they should be mastering.
Well, they need to listen. You know, make sure that you listen to how people talk. You know, it's very important to understand characters, to listen and be open to who people are. You know, there's a lot of kind of psychology that goes into writing, and it really is what we're trying to communicate. And one of the first things is to try and understand yourself and what moves you. You know,
Mhm.
you have to know what moves you in order to be able to move other people. And it's a question that we're always asking, right? This moves me. Does it move you? That's a question we're always asking. And so you have to know what moves you, what's important to you, what colors do you respond to, what kind of music do you respond to, is what place makes you happy and why does it make you happy? You know, I mean, there are colors that make me happy. Why is that? This color makes me happy, you know? And so you have to really be open to feeling things, and to looking around you and saying, what makes you sad? Is there a color that makes you sad? Is there what music makes you sad? And what things do you not want to look at? What do you run away from? What are you really afraid of? Interrogate yourself. What is scary to you? What's frightening? What are the places you don't want to go? And just examine everything, because in art you have to look at everything, right? Sometimes what scares you is what's interesting. What you're afraid of is what's interesting. And then, like I said to you before, they have to enjoy the journey, right? It's so important. It's the journey's everything. Okay, the journey is everything. So you've got to enjoy the journey of being an artist. And it's a wonderful journey, and it's an empowering journey, and it's I think that it can be a very noble journey.
This interview has been so impactful. So, for our final question, what is your biggest dream right now? What do you want to do next? And how can we all support that dream so that it comes into fruition?
Well, I'm working on a series, and it's mine. It'll be my first time writing, directing, and show running, so I'm really excited about it. And I'm also trying to get a movie made that is also very, very important to me, from a beautiful book called The Shadow King. And those two projects are they're huge dreams of mine, and I would like to both of these projects to come to fruition, and then I want to keep going. I want to keep going. I love what I do, and I just want to keep doing it. And I also love teaching and working with young artists, and I want to keep doing that. So yeah, those are my dreams, and to enjoy my family and be in the moment as much as possible.
Casey, oh my goodness, this was so much fun. Thank you for speaking with me, and you are truly amazing. Just
Thank you
amazing.
so much. It was great. I love speaking with you. It's been great.
And we hope to have you with us in person whenever that's possible again. We'd
Yeah,
love
I'd
to
love
bring
to.
you through. So, to our audience, please visit albanyfilmfestival.org for a wide range of offerings online and a couple in person. We also have links to where you can watch films by our guests online. Most of this year's film festival will be virtual, but we're also planning a couple of bold, unusual in-person events. These will be safe and socially distant outdoor events in late April and or early May. So check out albanyfilmfestival.org for the details. And if you wish to support future events like this one, feel free to make a donation on the New York State Writers Institute website. Thanks so much for giving us your time. Until next time, be well, family.